So I was asked to put this on the agenda for 15 minutes, and this seemed like the most sensible spot to build it in. It was right after I talked about regulatory law, because we were interacting with a regulatory agency on Thursday. So the floor is yours for 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. Let's see, 2 minutes, please.
Gonna keep the time.
Let's start with Dave. She has something in her mind.
Yeah.
I didn't get to finish this quote because they give you 2 minutes, and I had practiced and I could get it in, but something happened and I don't know. But anyway, this is a quote I wanted to read to the audience. This is a quote by Winona LaDue, and we actually got to see her talk that was in Madison, right? Sorry, okay. Someone needs to explain to me why wanting clean drinking water makes you an activist, and why proposing to destroy water with chemical warfare doesn't make a corporation a terrorist. And I just thought that fit in with what we were talking about. And John, it should make you feel better.
Yeah,
We're just normal, I never thought of myself as a radical person. I don't now. I just want what's right, Yeah.
sorry, who's that quote from?
She's
She was vice presidential nominee.
So what's
I have a suggestion around that. How about we go down the line or popcorn, whatever, talk about our impressions of the hearing first and talk about what we personally talked about or felt doing what we were doing. Is that work for folks? Yeah, you gotta watch when you step. Well, the hearing, we knew going in that this was not going to make a huge difference. That it was, as I heard somebody call it, a monkey show. But it was important to do because it also became clear to me, by talking to some folks there, that while the Utilities Board wasn't required to use any information they heard from those of us who testified, if the permit is passed and challenged, and then it could come up as evidential evidence, in an appeal. So the fact that we were there was part of the whole thing about pacifying the public, but it might actually be useful. It probably didn't impact the Utilities Board's decision. Okay, that's the first thing. We had been coached by Paul that one of the things we could do to make an impact would be not to face the Utilities Board, but to face the audience. So, this is the Utilities Board. Here's the podium. You come up to the podium, and instead of looking at them, put your back to them and talk to the audience.
Swing the mic.
And swing the mic around so they can hear you. And it worked really beautifully. That gave us the opportunity, which nobody else really had, of being photographed by the press, because everybody else had their back to the press who were over there. So we got our pictures in the paper, especially Mary Beth.
Well, especially you, because you were also in the Ames Tribune, and I'm getting a copy of that. I got your name all through it.
And I talked about, I read out of the Iowa Constitution about how we are in charge of the government, and if we don't like it, we get rid of it and start over. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And it was an empowering moment, even though I knew it was probably for naught, because I was speaking my truth, and I was speaking to the people who needed to hear it. And we talked about community rights, and we talked about talking to the grannies if you want to know more, and we handed out little info sheets. Okay, next.
My experience, I kind of explained a little bit. I was scared to death. I've not done this kind of thing before. My mouth was dry, my knees were shaking. But when Miriam got up there and just flipped that microphone over, I said, okay, that looked easy. So, because nobody else was doing that, just the grannies. So, and I was like number 49 or something. So I had a little time to watch other people. So I flipped that over, and I talked a little bit about our right to clean water, and that this pipeline would put that at risk, and that community rights maybe another way of fighting this thing, that we really kind of knew that, I don't know how I said that the IUB, we're not elected officials, and so we should be making the decisions, not somebody who's just been appointed. So that was kind of our message that we go over and over about this one little section 2, or Article 1, Section 2, or something in the Iowa Constitution says, we have rights. And so we kind of, each one had that included in our little 2-minute speech. But it was a good experience, and we did get, everybody was, oh, you Grannies are so great, and I mean, it really was empowering. And a lot of people talked to us afterwards, and so it was good.
Excuse me, picture us all in bright chartreuse shirts with the Granny's logo, and on the back it says educate, advocate, and agitate.
Size 52 font.
And that was important because the side 4 of the pipeline, the proponents were in orange. There's a lot of orange shirts.
All the union, all the people that spoke. Basically, I don't know anybody that wasn't union that spoke there, but they all had their orange.
There was a couple of corporate people that spoke.
But they were speaking for the union.
No, they were speaking for the benefit of their corporation, that they wouldn't be able to make as much equipment, like John Deere and whatnot.
That's much profit.
Yeah, profit money. And there were a lot of blue shirts too that were the No Walking Coalition. So
A lot of shirts stood out.
they did, yeah.
I wish I had my script here because I only got through half of it. But I started out by saying, pointing out that this issue is not an issue of rail or pipeline. It's not an issue of jobs. It's an issue of the habitability of the world, of this earth. And that's what we need to be looking at. And I quoted the Constitution, and I put out some statistics about the breaks we've had in pipelines, specifically the Yellowstone River, the Kalamazoo River, and Mayflower, Arkansas, how much damage is caused. I didn't get to say that had the Keystone XL been permitted, it was projected that in its 50-year estimated lifetime, it would leak 91 times. It's a given that these pipelines are going to leak. And I have a lot more I want to say. I did say, and I didn't turn around, except at one point, and I did say, my husband told me not to say that. But then it was quoted on how dare this board even consider this pipeline? And I turned to the union people, or the Dakota Access. How dare you try to do this to our state, where you have no authority, nothing to give us. I don't remember the exact wording, but to turn to them and say, how dare you do this?
Ann and I were like in the first group of 10, so I felt like that put a little more pressure on a person because you don't know what to expect and what other people are going to say. And it's almost better to be speaking later so you can adjust your speech a little bit to counteract what other people are saying. But I pretty much just read what I had presented or prepared, and it was again talking about the Constitution, and it was, as we said, more an educational thing for the people in the audience to hear those words over and over again, and hopefully it'll click on them because the opposite, or the people that are opposition, the people that were in favor of the pipeline kept saying, this will bring jobs, this will bring jobs, this will bring good paying jobs with insurance, and I have to feed my family, and this will bring good jobs, and they were very repetitious too. And what was disheartening to me on the whole thing was that, what was the percentage? 60% or 80% of the people speaking in favor of the pipeline were from out of state. And that was brought up several times by the people that were in opposition to it. And I feel like, I mean, if this is really truly, you know, we're talking about regulations and people's rights, community rights, they're not in our community. They really don't have a right to speak as far as I was concerned. And I thought that was the biggest sham of all. And then in defense of that, you know, some people later on, because there was over 100 of us speaking, would, you know, say, why are all you people from out of state here? Then the union people would get up and say, well, we're here in solidarity to the union brothers and sisters, and we're here to help support them, and blah, blah, blah. And I go, and we don't have union members in Iowa that can take your place? Why do you have to come all the way from Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas? I mean, it wasn't like they were coming from Illinois.
They emphasized it was a career.
Yeah, a lot of them did
temporary jobs.
Right. So it was really, I mean, I've spoken before boards before, so this wasn't anything new for me, but it was much bigger. My grammar's bad. It was bigger than anything I've done before, a lot more orchestrated, I guess is a good word to say. And it was, and well, police, we had to have a bags check every time we came in and out.
11 state policemen were patrolling the area.
For our safety, keeping us safe. And then, of course, at the end of the article in the Press Citizen too, if anybody read it, was, my husband goes, why did they have to put that in there? I said, I don't know. But it was something about, and everybody that entered the grounds was given a flyer about not bringing in firearms. Like, that really had nothing to do with the actual reason why we were out there.
I think that part of it might have been because some people do have permits to carry firearms. So I'm just saying, you know, for Donald Trump's sake, that, you know, he's been in the state a lot, and some of those people probably do carry firearms.
Well, I'm sure they do. But I don't think it had, the firearms thing really had nothing to do with the pipeline being built or not being built.
Safety.
Yeah. Well, safety, if safety is such a big damn issue, excuse me. Why are we building it?
Sorry, just
How much time do we have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, this clock looks like it's been stuck for a while. I actually lost track of your time.
Oh,
You tell me.
keep going.
I would say maybe 5 more minutes, something like that.
So, I was there, I did not speak, but I was working in that room. And let me tell you what I did. So, every speech said, if you want to learn more about community rights, go see the ladies with the green shirt. Well, I was the only woman with the green shirt standing in that room. So the first thing that happened to me, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, can I take a picture of the back of your shirt? So they really made a difference. These shirts really made a difference. And people were coming up to me left and right, congratulating the Grannies on how well they were doing and how forceful they were and wanting to get more information. So I was handing out these little sheets that's blue. But not just handing them out, talking to them about the issue, getting their contact information, full of contacts from all over Iowa, and even doing this in the ladies' room. In fact, I was while everybody was waiting in line, there's 5 women, and we started talking, and I knew some of them, and so it was very helpful. I got to use all of my social work networking skills for this. But I got things from Jasper County and Boone County and farmers of Landowner Association. We'll talk about it later. But the biggest thing I got too was somebody who was videotaping it, who videotaped the whole thing from its beginning to end. And I board was live streaming it, but they were not archiving it. If you can, I mean, they were taping, recording it, but the live part is, I think, really critical. So if there's somebody in Cedar Rapids Night Neighborhood Network, you know, somebody who did the whole thing from video. If you guys can use that.
I will try to.
Yeah. So that's a helpful piece. My impressions were that our side, the opposition, was incredibly well informed, articulate, had great arguments. put their whole heart and soul into it. We're creative, there's guitar players, and we did rap. Just, it was heartwarming to see all this. And on the other side, someone just was speaking English for 10 or 20 seconds.
Johnny won those.
Yeah, I need job. This is because I need job. So it was sad.
My favorite though was, the opponents had humor and entertainment and good arguments, but the one woman said, I'm speaking for my husband, because why should today be any different?
Yes. I also met Laverne Johnson from Pilot. So, great character.
What I remember most was a total discrepancy in the facts. On one hand, one side said, these pipes never leak, never have leaked, never will leak. And on the other side, he had specific items where they had leaked. And I'll pass it back.
And 20, I just read something that said 20 spills or pipeline leaks a day, an average 20 a day. I think it was serendipitous that Catherine got these shirts in time, that Paul was here, and you guys organized Paul being here and then the board meeting was at the same, how all that happened. It was not planned. Until the very end, it just all came together. I think that was incredible. And when I got home and on the news, I was trying to catch it. And they said on the news, they said, oh, the IUB board had to sit there all day and listen over to, they made it sound. And then I looked at their salaries. I'm like, they're getting paid to do that. We drive, 2.5 hours or 2.5. I'm like, I do not feel sorry for them.
They were falling asleep.
That's why.
I guess enough has been said about the process, but I think that there was no substitute for being there, and if we can have a video, I think you would have the sense of the energy in the room was pretty phenomenal. But there were some very, the exercise we did yesterday, 2 minutes, listening to somebody, I was sharing with John last night, it was the same thing. Everyone had 2 minutes to speak, and no more than 2 minutes, because you were cut off when the display went to 0. The picture that they took of me was in red with 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So the good thing about standing with my back to the IUB was that I could not see those displays. I was not distracted by them, whereas if you were facing the IUB, you had them on both sides of you, like the colors changing from green to yellow to red. Very distracting for me. But I do want to say that there were a couple people that spoke in opposition to the pipeline that I think had some very critical information, and they had their back to me, but I was listening very keenly to what they were saying, and there was a woman who used to work on pipelines. She gave a very compelling 2-minute talk about statistics and how pipelines have to fail. They have to fail because of the interaction between the metal of the pipe and the organic nature of the soil that they're in. So, and I thought to myself, I wanted to just stand up and cheer, say, well, thank you for some scientific evidence that your pipeline will eventually leak. I think that we know that when this Bakken oil field dries up, and it will very soon, because there were statistics given that day of how many oil fields have already been abandoned up there, and they're down to double digits instead of triple digits, and so we know that that's going to happen, and then what's going to be in that pipeline? And that's the thing that was unsaid.
Alberta tar sands.
Well, we know that because we are, we're kind of on the edge of that. We're looking at it critically, but that was never mentioned. When that oil field dries up, then the oil will come from the tar sands in Alberta, Canada, and it will not be the same oil. It will be liquid bitumen, and that is critical for people to know that the Kalamazoo River still has it in the bottom of the river because it can't be retrieved. It sinks instead of floating. So it's there. You can't clean it up. It's there forever. Your river is dead. You just live with it. So I too was cut off, and I thought, how sad, because there were several people that spoke in my 10 people from 21 to 30 who talked about the morality or rather the immorality of this pipeline. And so my last sentence I'm going to read too, because it was a quote. And it was a quote that I thought was really important. I saw this quote, I saw this inscribed in the rotunda of the state capitol bylaws when I was there lobbying in January. So my last two sentences. Even if the IUB grants this petition by Dakota Access, we the people have the power to stop it. See any of the grannies here today, find out how. Recall the words engraved at the state capitol rotunda. Nothing is politically right, which is morally wrong. But I think that enough people had implied that, and I think that people in the audience were beginning to believe by the time all of these grannies had spoken that there was something that could be done. So that was the good part of the day. Very satisfying.
Yeah, it was interesting to be there to hear these other takes on how this is going to affect people. Like hearing from the landowners talk about the soil compaction and the tiling disruption, and how there was things like that they shared, and some gentleman who worked with recreational trails talked about how moving a recreational trail or building one is scrutinized way more than what the pipeline is going through. So that's kind of crazy. But my 2 minutes was about community rights too. It was, thank you very much, Paul, for providing those scripts that we could take and kind of make a little. I had to cut a lot of that one off because I can't talk fast enough to 2 minutes. But anyway, I tried to put it in a nutshell and add a little bit too, and it was pretty exciting to be able to talk to that whole big room full of people.
Did anybody mention climate change?
Oh, yes.
Marcia did. My next question is, okay, the opposition had 1 day. Now Dakota Access has 10 days to make their case to the board. Is anybody watchdogging that process?
Well, everybody's allowed to sit there, but you can't talk.
I know, but it seems as though like CCI or someone should have somebody there every day to listen to what's being said.
I think they are going to do that. And-
There was,
But it's not just Dakota Access, I mean,
Right.
all the people that have brought,
engineers. and-
Expert witnesses.
Expert witnesses
on
on
both
both
sides.
But there really should be somebody.
they are having somebody there, Nathan, whatever.
Well, somebody told me, at the front of the room, there was like 2 rows of tables with, I wouldn't say suits, but,
Yeah.
and actually maybe in the middle as well. And, I guess we came to find out later that they were, like, the suits were for the opposition or the, in favor of it, or the lawyers. But I know one of the guys that was sitting on the, far side, the left side, the opposition of the pipeline. And I don't know what he is. I don't think he's a lawyer. He spoke
He
to
could be
Chris
an
Wells.
engineer.
Do you know Chris? Anyway, he spoke and he's sitting at that table. So he, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people observing. And then Wally Taylor from the Sierra Club is there. And also I think the whole thing is going to be streamlined. So
It is.
you can watch
There
it
is.
every single day if you want to.
Since she's not here, I'd like to just talk about what Donna Ruth did.
Oh, yes.
She wrote a very creative story. And I won't go through the whole story, but it was about this family who was really nice to let this pipeline go through because they wanted to be good neighbors. And then the Dakota family moved in next door and wanted to build this pipeline next to her house. And she talked about how her basement started stinking and it was leaking and there were all these air problems and people were getting sick, whatever. And it was a very cleverly creative way, just in story form. It was, it was a, what do you call it, an allegory about the pipeline. It was really well received. And it was very different than any of the rest of us.
And the Dakotas moved away and went bankrupt,
Right.
so then she was left with,
A mess.
And when they asked permission of her, they were offered her money with which she bought a new car, but after several years, the car wasn't running anymore. So that was very, very cleverly done.
And
Very
her
nice.
brother-in-law, who got a construction job, didn't have a job anymore. So,
Yeah, so she
short
picked
term,
up everything.
short term.
It's great.
It was exciting, it was fun, it was interesting, it was challenging, it was heartwarming.
I only heard one person who was supporting the pipeline say anything about climate change. And what he said was wrong.
Derogatory.
And then he said, the environmentalists, instead of coming here and making this whatever, should go and try to change China and India.
Well, and one of those people in favor, actually, a younger man who had quite a very strong voice. I remember I was standing in the back of the room talking with somebody, but what I heard him say was, and I didn't see anyone here get here on a bicycle or walking, and I thought, well, I wonder if that's really true, because there were over 400 people there, and but his implication was, we can't live without oil, we need gas. And there's just no way to even talk about this. So I think that that message was being shared with the room, but I don't think anybody except the people in the orange shirts were really listening to that. It's disheartening. And one young man said, we can't call this climate change anymore, we have to call it climate crisis. We were using the wrong name. So it was brought up in opposition. But
Thank you, Grannies.
Thank you all.
the rest of the grannies who did not share their electronic version would get them to me. I'll send them to Catherine, they'll all be on the website.
Great.